All right. Good afternoon or morning, depending on where you are. Thank you so much for joining us for our breakout session today on statewide collaborations. Before we begin with our discussion, let's just talk about a little housekeeping. So first, for the best viewing of the session, you want to click on your platform for Zoom and hover your mouse over the right-hand side of the square so that you can remove the non-video view. That way you can just see our panelists, and you can scroll down and click the hide function so that you can focus on the presenters for today. And then of course, if you have any questions, please drop them in the Q&A, and during that portion of our time, we'll be happy to address them then. And so let's get started. My name is April Atkins, and I have the pleasure of moderating this discussion today. I'm with the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation in our Community Affairs group. And today I'm joined by Melissa and Esther, and so I want to give them a moment to introduce themselves. Melissa?
Hi, good morning. I'm Melissa Slover Athey, and I am the Director of Community Engagement with Center State, now South State Bank. And so we are very excited to be in 6 states now throughout the Southeast, and very happy to be here today. Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa. And Esther, hi.
Hi, good morning or afternoon, as April said, depending on where you're sitting. I'm Esther Marshall. I am the Community Development Market Manager. I'm sorry, my role just changed. Community and Economic Development Market Manager for our Southeast states for Fifth Third Bank. We are headquartered in Cincinnati, but we have an 11-state footprint.
Awesome, and congratulations, Esther.
Thank you.
So let's get started with our conversation. So you guys want to talk a little bit about how long you've been a partner with BBIF and what your partnership looks like. And Esther, we'll start with you.
Absolutely. I would say over 10 years we've been partnering with BBIF, and it's ranged. It's been very collaborative. We provided capital to form their new market tax credit loan fund for small businesses. We've partnered to provide small business development funding and lending and investments to support technical assistance that they do. Their Business Opportunities Symposium series, we've sponsored that. And so we brought our financial empowerment mobile, and we did 101 financial empowerment, credit checks for small businesses, because we know small businesses are their credit because they haven't necessarily split themselves from their business. As well. And I sit on BBIF's Community Development Advisory Board with Melissa. So it's been a holistic approach. I really credit that to Inez and her team. They leverage every aspect of the bank. And so we're very responsive to their needs and also help them support their development and growth as well.
For sure, yes. Melissa?
Thanks. So not been quite as long a partner with BBIF as Esther and team, but we have been a partner, Center State has been a partner with BBIF since about 2013. And it's kind of an interesting story how I was introduced to BBIF. Sometimes you have to leave your own backyard. So I had been in Panama City. I sit in Orlando. I had been in Panama City. I met Inez when she was presenting at a roundtable in Panama City, and she was talking about the BOSS events. And so when I got back to Orlando, attended a BOSS event, saw how dynamic they were. We sponsored a BOSS event, and then the rest is kind of in history from there. So we've sponsored, participated in a number of, again, BOSS events, other technical assistance training. We participated in their strategic planning sessions. We have employees who are a part of the loan committee. I'm again work with Esther on the community development committee, and then we are in the process, and we have in the past, but we're going through a bit of a transition right now with our merger, and so we are referring customers to BBIF as well that we can't currently serve.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that as well and what that looks like. So now that we have our introductions out of the way, and you guys have talked a little bit about how long you've been working with BBIF, and I'm sure you've seen a lot of changes over the years based on what's been going on. Let's talk a bit about just how you individually and your banks support the Black community. So even before calls for social justice and calls for, meeting diversity and equity and inclusion initiatives, both of your banks have been engaged in this work. So do you want to talk a little bit about that? Melissa, we'll start with you.
Sure, great, thank you. So we have, as you already mentioned, we've been engaged with our Black and African American community for some time. It's always been there. And then just to give you a brief history, and I think I need to set the context here, at least as it relates to Center State. So Center State, we're a smaller community bank, and we very much live by our core values. So we're very relationship oriented. We are very faith-based, or if you will, faith and family is very important to us. And we push the decisions, we're very local market driven, so we push the decisions as close as possible to where the action is. And so by doing that, we have a number of employees that do a lot in their communities. And we don't advertise it. We may not know about it because it's just the right thing to do. It's just what we do. And so with some of the things that have happened here more recently, Center State, now South State, we look to make sure that we continue to support the Black community through means such as donations and grants to organizations that support the Black community. Also in other creative or flexible ways, we have lending partnerships with and deposits in minority financial institutions. We provide various technical training or financial education programs with various CDFI partners and other community development corporations. And then we also have we work very strategically or very specifically with advertising with Black-owned radio and Black-owned media. So that way we are specifically targeting and supporting Black-owned small businesses. And then with our newly merged bank and our more northern footprint in North Carolina, we've been partnering with Black-owned realtors and realtors associations to ensure that we are, achieving the goal of home ownership. And then from a small business perspective, with the PPP2, so the second round of PPP, we've been working strategically with our partners, CDFIs and other community development corporations, entities that specifically work with BIPOC small businesses. And so we have a designated channel for the PPP2, a designated lender. We provided technical assistance training specifically on PPP, and then we have that very specific avenue. So those are the things we've done historically, and then we've just continued, and now we're talking about them more.
Great, thank you. Esther?
Yeah, I agree with Melissa. My answer is almost identical. I've been with Fifth Third for 20 years. And even before then, our partnerships, our investments, our programs have always been geared towards supporting equitable outcomes in Black communities. And that's something I'm very proud of. We saw the need to go deeper when social justice or injustice started occurring. It elevated that work. And so small business lending and technical assistance in African American communities, supporting small business loan funds for minorities and women, mortgage products, down payment assistance products in low to moderate income, communities as well. Not only that, but we serve, we put on jeans and t-shirts and we go into local communities. And that's work we've been doing for years. Again, now that things have changed a little, or maybe even a lot, the way we can look at it, we've seen the need to elevate that work. So more partnerships with organizations that sit in African American communities are working to raise and support and transform communities and families, as well as small business. So it's been a holistic approach, and that's something I'm very proud of.
Wonderful, thank you. And I love how, you both talked about not just the small business side of things, but like just holistically looking at things from a community perspective and your partnerships that way. So diving into just the nature of CDFIs and the work that they do and how they connect with your interest in community development, can you talk a little bit about how you decide as banks to partner with CDFIs and which ones you decide to support? Esther, we'll start with you.
Yeah, we are actually in the process now that we see that there's a greater need of building a more robust strategy around how we partner, but we look at CDFIs that support our footprint, that have scalable work, that can be leveraged across several markets, maybe with one investment. We look at how CDFIs feel the needs in the community, so their track record, their focus area, and how it aligns with Fifth Third's as well. And then we look at their financial health. How are they doing? What are they doing or maybe not doing that they could use some support with? That, transparency on where they really are, so that we can ensure that the goals that we're going to set together are met. So again, we're kind of making it more robust, but those are some of the basics. And those have been some of the things that have helped us with our partnership with BBIF, that transparency, those conversations. BBIF, and I'm sure they do it with Melissa, they don't leave anything on the table when it comes to resources. They will pick up the phone and call and say, hey, we're thinking about doing this program. We like that kind of, conversation and relationship. And so we look for things like that when we're looking to invest.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for that. Melissa? Sure. So some of this will be a repeat from what Esther just said, but I will say maybe what's a little bit different. So we are a much smaller institution compared to Fifth Third, and so our historic ways in which we would choose to participate with our local CDFIs, we do a lot of needs assessment. So what are the largest needs in our community, and then that's how we look to partner. So we as a financial institution maybe didn't have the capacity to do X in a community, but if we partnered with the CDFI, there's an opportunity to leverage those dollars and make those dollars go further. And so that's how we look to make those historic decisions. And I will say, moving forward, because we've had this incredible opportunity to grow, excuse me, we're still approaching it from that perspective, the needs assessment perspective, but we are doing, I guess, if you will, more strategic and aligning with our core values. So one of our core values is, making sure that we are, of course, local market driven, we're relationship oriented, it's not transactional in nature. So as we move forward, we are looking to partner with CDFIs where the relationship will be reciprocal in nature, where we have the ability to refer clients back and forth. If we, another one of our core values, if you will, is providing remarkable experiences. So we provide our employees the opportunity, we empower them to make the right decisions for their employees and provide them with that unprecedented experience. And so part of that unprecedented experience is knowing when we can't serve their needs. If we can't, who can help them? And so creating those partnerships, educating our frontline, teammates, if you will, so that way they know that there are alternatives with our CDFI partners. So those are some of the opportunities or the ways that we select which CDFIs to partner with.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. So let's circle back to our initial discussion around cries for justice. So as a result of all of the things that have transpired over the last, well over a year at this point, has your organization since then developed any new initiatives to collaborate with BIPOC-led CDFIs? And I know, you have market presence, beyond the state of Florida. So feel free to just speak to, how your banks have responded to that. Melissa, you want to start?
Yes, definitely. So really, there have been a couple of things, and I'm grateful for this question, actually. Thank you. So we've done a number of things, but one thing I want to talk about that has really provided us with a catalyst for making things that we've been working on in the community development industry for a long time really get some legs, if you will, and move forward quickly. So part of the OCC, I'm an OCC bank, and so part of the OCC is Project Reach. And we have really committed to Project Reach. And what I'm thrilled about is that our senior and executive management has met with the OCC. They're well aware of Project Reach and how they have bought into what we've, they've always been a supporter of community development, but when they're hearing it from a different angle, they're like, oh, we totally should be doing this. So just being very candid, it's great to get that additional push, if you will, from the top. And so we've always had relationships with MDI's minority depository institutions, but with the emphasis of Project Reach, we get to grow those relationships. So, historically, we had deposits, sat on maybe advisory committees. Now we're getting the opportunity, we're exploring executive management sharing programs. We have a correspondent bank, and we have a fairly decent size ATM network. So how can we partner with our CDFIs to offer them our ATM network? How can we offer them the use of our credit underwriting expertise? We have a commercial and intern management training intern program. Can we open that up to our CDFI and our MDI partners and provide them with that training opportunity? So those are some of the things that we've started. And then in addition to that, and not specifically related to CDFIs, but the bank had been considering this for a long time, but it's something that the events of last year really were a catalyst against and expedited, if you will, the hiring of a director of corporate stewardship. And so the gentleman who is now our director of corporate stewardship, his area, he's focusing on 5 areas of the bank: enterprise diversity, environmental social governance, management development, which includes our recruiting and intern programs, community development, which is yay, us, and then our it's called an internal sunshine fund. And we believe that charity starts at home. So we have an employee program where we serve our employees first so that way they can in turn serve the community. And so he's working on setting up this foundation with our various business units so that way we can have, cross collaboration, cross communication, and making sure that we're more intentional and more aware in our decision making.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And actually, you've mentioned minority depository institutions a couple of times. And so for our audience, just want to share that there's a lot of information available from the FDIC about minority depository institutions. So please visit our website, which is fdic.gov. And you can go in our search engine, type in minority depository institution or MDI, and you'll find all of the variety of information we have, including a listing of all of the MDIs in the country. So Esther, what would you like to say about that on behalf of Fifth Third Bank?
Before I start, I want to tell Melissa that is absolutely amazing what you all are doing. And I really, really admire that work because it's really about what can we do, as a bank and what will resonate with the communities we work with. So Fifth Third launched a $8.75 million COVID Resiliency Relief and Response Fund early last year. And I was very impressed at how quickly we did it. It wasn't even a second thought. We saw that there was a need with COVID, with unrest. Things would just kind of started going in a direction that we felt like we needed to step up. But through that fund, we invested $1.2 million in a program called Innovation Meets Main Street. And it was about boosting Black women business owners. And it was a partnership with Association for Enterprise Opportunity, AEO, and LISC. And it was powered by Fifth Third, but it was targeted to help get grants and technical assistance and capital infusions into minority female business owners to not only help them survive the pandemic, but to actually go beyond the pandemic and make it, because we know a lot of small business owners didn't make it. Another thing that we did most recently that I'm very proud of is we announced a $2.8 billion community commitment around accelerating racial equity, equality, and inclusion. And so that is specific to Black communities, Black employees, and Black customers. And it's going to provide lending and investments, financial accessibility, as well as philanthropy, specifically for those 3 areas. And so we have an enterprise leadership team, at the very top, a group of employees that trickle all the way down in terms of different work streams we have, working on how do we do it, what does it look like, and then begin to deploy it. And that includes a $100 million neighborhood strategy to specifically transform African-American communities, dig deeper, facade improvements, helping with infrastructure, decreasing vacancy rates are some of the things we're considering, as well as improving home ownership and providing financial empowerment, working with HBCUs and hiring HBCU students. And so some of those commitments, CDFIs have been a part of that work, and we feel like the commitments that we're making will allow us to go deeper with some of our CDFI partners to really support the mission and to really get more involved and active in moving the needle in these communities, especially with what has occurred and what is still occurring and the remnants of that.
Sure, sure. And to that end, both of you have mentioned volunteerism. You've also talked about, the different programs that you have in partnership with CDFI, specifically BIPOC CDFIs, but then globally as a whole, as far as community development is concerned. But I think what our audience would really love to hear about is how have you leveraged the volunteerism within the bank in order to specifically connect with BIPOC-led CDFIs? What does that look like? Can you discuss how that works, as well as maybe provide some examples too? Esther, you want to take that?
Our employees sit on boards and committees. I think Melissa, mentioned that earlier. It's a lot of volunteerism going on. Of course, it looks a little bit differently since we can't necessarily be out like we normally would or would used to. But we serve as trusted advisors to CDFIs. Like I said, we have a lot of partnerships where they'll just pick up the phone and say, I'm thinking about running this program. And so we can ask questions and we can kind of give them, here's how we would look at it as a bank. So here's some things to consider. We don't compete to meet needs. So, if they don't wind up working with us, we're okay with that. We just want to make sure that our employees are plugged into that work. Our employees raise our hand to do one-on-one counseling with small business owners on behalf of. And so like Melissa said, those referral opportunities, there's a lot of volunteerism going on, and our employees are actually kind of devastated that we can't do some of the things that we would normally do. However, our service has been, if I can use the word holistic, in us making sure we're there for the organization and the community and the individuals it serves.
Absolutely, absolutely. Melissa, what are your thoughts?
Can I just say repeat, ditto? No, spot on, Esther. Very similar, and I will echo that. Our employees right now are like jumping at the bit to really get out. So we've had to pivot and try and do things a little differently, virtually, et cetera. But so specifically, how we've been utilizing our volunteers with our CDFI partners is everything that Esther mentioned. We sit on, loan committees, we sit on advisory committees, but also it's kind of the one-on-one type technical assistance. So maybe a more specific example is through this PPP process, we've worked with some of our CDFI partners to provide an extra employee, if you will. So we have a plethora of commercial lenders, volunteering, if you will, those commercial lenders with our CDFI partners. So that way they are able to provide their lending knowledge and expertise to those CDFIs. So that's maybe a little more specific type example, but otherwise very similar to everything that Esther said. But we enjoy our partnerships with our CDFIs because it does also give us the opportunity to explore new things and to explore some, hey, we would like to do this. Is this impactful, or are we heading down the wrong direction? We see that this is a need. What are your employees? What are your volunteers? What are the other folks that volunteer with your organization? What are you hearing? So that's a little different approach to the volunteer question, but that's another way that we partner or work with our CDFIs.
Wonderful, yes. And what I hear at the root of what both of you shared is really communication is key. And so as you're establishing these partnerships, you're asking them, what is it you need and how can we assist you as banks? And so I think, that really just speaks to the integrity of those partnerships. So let's just say you could make a wish. What would you like to see moving forward as statewide collaboratives with other banks to support the work of BIPOC-led CDFIs? If you could just create it yourselves moving forward and just, yes, exactly, Melissa. You want to take that one?
Sure, I would love to. So a couple of things that I would love to see happen, and actually I have a list from listening to the earlier breakout sessions or the earlier conversations today. But so a couple of things. One, I really want to push this executive sharing program. I love that concept. I think that there's some mutual learning that will occur back and forth. So I really want to see that as a future maybe statewide initiative, because there's always the concern for privacy and litigation and all of that. So at a statewide level, how can we ease those concerns of sharing of information or, litigation concerns? If we let an executive share with a CDFI, and I don't know what horrible thing could potentially happen, but let's ease those fears. Let's assuage those fears. So education surrounding that, so that way we have executives that are willing to share and don't have fear for whatever potential outcome that they may be fearful of. I think some of the other things that I would really like to see happen is some sensitivity type training at a statewide level. So bringing together financial institutions, bringing together the CDFIs, the community, government leaders, et cetera, and having sensitivity type training, being in a safe environment, maybe having some difficult conversation type training, because to me, communication is communication and training, education. We have to get rid of fear. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of things are fear-based. And so I feel like if we can bring people together, have a safe space to have safe conversation, and really have a learning opportunity through those conversations where nothing that you say is judged or held against you, but that you get to learn from it and really learn different perspectives. And maybe do this with a little bit combined with unconscious bias training. So that's something I would love to see at a statewide level, getting multiple partners involved. And then, and so I don't keep rambling here, I really wanted to point out Sadaf Knight, sorry, I hope I pronounced her name correctly, in one of the earlier sessions, so she mentioned about transportation or the lack thereof for Floridians. And this is something that we hear time and time again. Our footprint is more rural in nature. And so one of the big challenges that we see with our constituents, if you will, is the difficulty in getting to jobs because of lack of transportation. And so how can we start these conversations? I know that there are conversations taking place, but how can we, from the financial sector, start these conversations so that way, because a lot of it is sometimes, in my opinion, figuring out how to finance, how to fund these type of opportunities. So how can we bring the bright financial minds in the state of Florida together to start solving, or at least having the conversation about the transportation issues within Florida in our rural markets? Urban, yes, definitely, but also in our rural markets. So lots more, but those are my highlights.
I love it. Thank you, Melissa. Esther, what you got?
I'll take Melissa's list and double it. So with all of the issues that she mentioned and brought up, I would love to see financial institutions. We're already talking, we already meet, we're already connected, but pulling more resources. Let's get together and look at how we can be innovative and work with CDFIs to do more. And Melissa said that. How do we, convene everyone around a conversation, but then put our actions behind it as well. And so again, we don't compete to meet needs. And that's the fun of Melissa and I's job. Is so if I pick up the phone, which I can do, and call Melissa and say, hey, Fifth Third is considering, supporting the CDFI with this particular fund, or what can we do to be more innovative and supportive and creative? Because joining together as a collaborative makes us more powerful, and it gives the CDFIs and the community more resources and more access if we would continue to work together and elevate that even potentially.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. So we're actually getting to the 12:25 minute, which means that there's some time for some Q&A. So we encourage everyone to drop your questions in the Q&A so that we can hear from Esther and Melissa, their thoughts and their responses. So while we wait for a couple of questions to come in, just another one to you guys. Now that we are, hopefully moving forward with this COVID environment, positively with the vaccine and everything, if you had to guess, how do you see your support for CDFIs changing in the next 2 years, especially, in light of the damage that's becoming more clearer as a result of COVID-19?
Well, for me, I see Fifth Third support increasing. I did mention we're developing a more robust strategy. And so Melissa mentioned something around needs assessment. I see the work that we're doing increasing and becoming more elevated. It's always been intentional, so I won't take that, away from the bank. but more focused, more pinpointed. I see us doing more and supporting more, and again, being innovative and creating opportunities where it's not just, and it doesn't just stop with small business technical assistance, but it does include capital infusions. It does include support for technology. It includes everything that small businesses need to be sustainable. So I see us doing more.
And I'd like to add to that. So one of the things that, so we've been thinking about this internally, and I would love to see this also with our Cdfi partners. So, you know, the PPP program round one, PPP round two, these were great, needed for obvious reasons. But what's going to happen after that? What, you know, this pandemic is continuing. Yes, we have the vaccine. I don't want to be negative, Nellie. We're coming out of this. But what is the next thing? And are we prepared for what happens when there is not another round of PPP, but yet we still have some of our small businesses that are struggling? Is there an opportunity, just as Esther said, for the banks to step in and provide additional capital? And what does that look like? And how do we deploy that capital? So are we deploying it in grants? Are we deploying it in a different loan structure? Maybe, you know, maybe not the you know, traditional loan structure, or even the traditional Cdfi loan structure. So I think those are some of the things like for us to think about in terms of the end of the pandemic.
If I can add to what Melissa just said, I see in the next 2 years, Cdfis being more ready. You know, this all kind of caught us by surprise. And Cdfis, one, just for being a Cdfi, you know, and getting that designation is huge. But I see Cdfis now thinking through and positioning themselves to take on larger funds and create opportunities and, you know, be ready with their programming on how to do it at a greater level. So I see some readiness coming from Cdfis to increase their work as well.
Wonderful, wonderful. Ladies, it's always a pleasure to chat with you. And I'm so thankful that we had this time together and that you were able to share with the audience all the great things your banks are doing and your partnership with BBIF and other Cdfis. So thank you so much for your time. Thanks to our audience for tuning in. We really appreciate you. As a reminder, we're about to roll into a break, but then we have another session. And so because this is such a rock star event, you can link directly to the next session in the chat. So thanks again for your time and have a wonderful, wonderful Wednesday.
Thank you, April. Thanks, Melissa.